Hello guys, welcome to this exciting tutorial. Today I'm here, Sansar, with a new tutorial on Fume FX. Um, Previously I have been creating some tutorials for basics of Fume FX. I created 3 parts and that's almost done for the basic settings of Fume FX. If you haven't watched it, then you can go back and watch it on my channel. So that I have already completed the basic part. Now I'm going to use the same basic settings to create an explosion. So let me show you what we'll be creating. So this is a just Fume FX preview window, and let me okay. So this is what we'll be creating today, and this is a simple explosion, not too large scale explosion, but um, it's really good. If you learn to create this, then you'll be able to create your own explosions as well. Okay, and you can see that we have got a quick fire bursting out and turning into a smoke cloud and flying upwards. So that's what basic explosion looks like. Fire bursts out quickly and then a smoke rises up. Okay, let me render it once. Okay, let me first not save this and just single, and then just render it out. Okay, here you can see that we have got a smoke and even some fires beside it. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll be creating this from scratch. So let us go ahead and reset our scene and then get started. I don't want to save that. Okay, let us create our explosion. First, let me create a Fume FX container. Okay, roughly about. Okay, let me go to modify UI tunnel, and then just keep that step. Just I did that to avoid that error message at first. So let me just adjust the width, height, and length. Maybe I want the width a little longer, or bigger, maybe about 175, and length I think that'll be pretty okay. And height I want to increase it a little more, about this. Okay. And the spacing for right now I'll leave that, and then later on we'll increase that to see how the output looks like. Okay, so if you have watched my basic parts and if you still remember, then the next part is for creating our source. So we'll be creating a simple source. Okay, let me 0 the X position and Y position and move a little upward in the G direction. Let me go to modify and just decrease the diameter of this one a little bit less. Okay, then that'll be good to create our smoke. Our explosion. Okay, now let us add our source to the Fume FX object. Source, add this. Okay, now we'll be playing around with the settings to create our smoke. Oh, sorry, I'm always confusing with smoke, so it's explosion. Okay, so at first I'm going to set our temperature amount. Let us increase that to about 900, so that'll make our fuel a little more hotter and it'll burn at higher rate. Okay. Okay, we just want the shape to be sphere. Next thing, let me go to simulation tab and then change the iteration to 70, because we don't need too much of iteration, we don't have too much detail, or we don't have larger simulations, so that will be just fine. And let me just play around with some basic settings and we'll just try to tweak them up later on maybe turbulence to about 0.5, and then scale, let's say that scale to about 12 or maybe 14, and detail frame to about 5. Hey, let's say just let me add some basic settings, then we'll just tweak that according to our needs. Maybe we want this to be a little less so our file will last longer. Okay, let's go ahead and do a quick sim. Okay, now we just have a simple fire uh, which does not looks like explosion. Okay, so if you have noticed that in our explosion the fire bursted and it just disappeared. So every explosion is like that. So once the fire burns and it dies out. So to create that, we need to go to object source and animate our fuel. Okay, so let me set an auto key, go to our first frame, uh, just set the fuel to 0 at first frame, and then go to about 10 frame and set it back to 100, and let's say about 24 frames I want to set it back to 0 as well. Okay, let me just close the preview, and then let me turn off the auto key. So we have got 0 fuel amount at 0 frame, and at the 10 frames slowly increasing our amount to up to 100, and again 0 in our 24 frames. Okay, now let's have another sim and look what it looks like. So now our fire burns up and dies out, and only smoke is left, so our fire has died out. Okay, so we just don't want our fire to die out, but we also want our smoke to die. So what we can do that? So we can link the smoke to our fuel. So we can do that by right clicking this and voxel fuel. Okay, and let me set this amount to about 1.7. Okay, so what this does is it will be related with our fuel, and then the smoke will die along with the fire. So another sim, so we can see that we have got some fire with some turbulence, and then now fire dies along with the smoke. Okay, and at last we got a little plume of smoke. So okay, now I think we are pretty much done with our object source tab. So if we need something to adjust, we'll come back later. So let us go back to simulation tab. So now it's time to go ahead more to create kind of explosion. Okay, so now I think we have got too much turbulence in that, so let me change it to about 0.4. I think that'll be fine, and set the scale to about 9. Let's say I want to increase. Okay, first let me have a look one more time. Okay, that turbulence. Okay, so we have got that. Okay, let me increase this frame to about 17. Just the scale frames are just controlling our turbulence, and it'll just control the turbulence. Okay, let me set the detail, increase it up, maybe up to 5. Okay, if that's not good, we'll change the letter. I want our fire to last a little longer, so I'm changing this burn rate down to, let's say, about 12, and then I want to increase the heat production to about 25, and expansion. This is the most of the value which will help us to give an explosive feel. So if we increase this, let's say, let me increase it a little more for now, and if we do that, we have got expanding fire too much. Okay, so we don't want that much, but just less. Let's say about 5 for now. So now we have a little more explosive fire, but I think that 5 is a little too much for us. So let me just decrease that. Let me set it to about 3 and increase the hit production to about 40. Okay. Um, okay, now we have got that our fire burning and changing into a smoke cloud. So don't worry about the fire color, and that doesn't look too natural, but we'll play around with that later on. Okay, let me stop this. Okay, next thing will be let me increase the burn rate. I think that fire lasted too long. We don't want the fire to last too long as well. About 14, that's good. And the burn rate variation, I'll increase it to 1, so that some fire will die sooner and some fire will last a little longer. Okay. Next thing you want is the buoyancy. So it will help the fire to rise upper. So we don't want our fire to rise too much up. So let me decrease that. Let's say about 0.8. Then let me see how it looks. So test simulation each and every time. That's really essential step on creating any of your simulations. So you will get to know what you are doing with each and every settings. Okay, that looks good, but we can see that our container is a little small for our simulation, so they are just moving side ahead. So let me just increase our width a little bit and length. I think we don't need length too much, and let me increase the height a bit. Okay, back to simulation tab. Now we don't want to play around with gravity. Okay, let's see what we have got next. So we have got in the fuel tab, we have got fire create smoke. So if you turn this on, then as the fire burns, the smoke will come out together. So I think you won't see much difference now, but when you play around with the fire color and rendering its opacity, then we'll see the difference. Okay, let me stop it for now. Okay. Okay, let me increase the smoke density. Let's say about 1.5. I think that must for our simulation tab as well. I think we are done. I'll come back later on to go ahead with something else. So before that, let me set up our lights. Okay, first of all, let me do a little more simulation. So we are getting this explosive feel, which will let our fire to be more explosive. That's done with expansion, so that's really important. Okay, we're getting our cloud smoke. Okay, let me stop it right here, and let me do a quick render. So if you see that our smoke is just kind of a 2D, just a plain kind of a gray color, so we want it to feel like a smoke in a 3D space, or having some effects of shadows like that. So we can create our lights. So as I have also mentioned in my basic part tutorial, that light doesn't affect fire, but it does affect smoke. So let me go to light spotlight and let me manage it a little bit. Okay, maybe this will look good. Okay, let me go back to front view. Okay, so once we have set up our light, let me select the light and go to modify panel, and I want to turn on the shadow, and under shadow map I want to use ray trace shadows. You can use anything else, and on the shadow parameters I'm going to turn on atmosphere shadows. Okay, that's okay. Now again, back to our Fume FX UF floater. So under illumination tab I'm going to add my spotlight. Okay, now if you do a simulation, um, just a while. Let the smoke comes at first. Let me stop it right there. Okay, we still have got the white smoke, so on the rendering tab, let me change the color of smoke to, okay, first of all, right click and keyless mode, and then select kind of a grayish color, dark gray. Okay, and then do a quick render. So we're not getting too much depth still. So how can we get that? We have got one option called cast shadows and receive shadows under rendering tab and smoke. So we have got this cast shadows and receive shadows. This will help our smoke to um, cast shadows as well as receive the shadows. So let me on them and do another render. Now you can see that we have got shadows in our smoke, so it looks better than before. Okay. Now, okay, let us go around and play around with our fire color. So maybe I think this one's better place. So the changes we made in rendering tab will just take effect in our preview window, so we don't need to resimulate it, so it can be seen better. So let me right click to the fire color and set to key mode, so we can choose a gradient for our fire color. So this is where you want to play around and get your desired result. Let me just go ahead with some quick result. Let's say kind of reddish, maybe like this. Okay, kind of a little darker one. Add one more right here. Just click down to add, and then double click that to choose a color for that one. Maybe a little orangey one for this one as well. Okay. Okay. Let me add another one right here. So you want to go ahead and play around with these settings and get a desired color. So sometimes you want to play around with this too much, very much, so to get some desired result. When you go ahead for more and more production, then you might want to play around with this for hours and hours to get the desired correct result. Okay, let me change the color to about 1, so we have got too bright. So let me decrease the opacity to about 0.5 or maybe 0.4. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let me go to the opacity curve and then play around with this one. So these are just based on what you do. So they does not really mean that you need to do the same thing. So you can just play around. So you can see if I decrease this down, then our middle fire and that just disappears. Okay, so you want to do it correct. Okay. So click on the line to add the vertex, and then just play around. Okay. Maybe I want to push this up a little bit. Okay, that looks good. Okay, same thing, we can also set our opacity for our smoke. So if you see that we don't have too much of smoke, we have just less, so I want to increase the opacity to, let's say, about 8 maybe. So we have got really dense smoke, you can see that. So we have got our dense smoke. Okay, we can also go ahead and render it. Okay, so since we are doing our simulation in really low resolution, so our rendering does not look too good, so that's fine for now. Okay, so maybe I want to set our smoke a little bit kind of darker. Okay, now let me go to illumination tab. Now we have already added our spotlight to the scene. We can also add multiple lights, so I want to add one more light which will give little more illumination from the side. So let me go ahead and create our target spot and just create another, and to light spot 2, and let me just position this one, rotate this a bit. Okay, now I'm back to front view. Okay, now I want to go to modify and choose around some settings. So I don't want this to cast shadows or anything else, I just want it to give little illumination to our smoke. So let me choose a color to about blue. We want to make it blue, not white. Okay, so it will give little bit of blue. Let me decrease the multiplier to about 0.5. That's good. Okay, and then let us add that light to our illumination lights. Add that, and now let's see how it looks. Okay, okay, just wait for a while and let it simulate a little bit. Okay, let me just stop it right here and do a quick render. So you can see that we have got a little bit of blue in our scene. So let me position it a little bit more, kind of a little far, and then set this one back as well. So we have got a little bit of blue illumination from kind of side or a little bit back. Okay, or maybe we may wanna decrease our multiplier to about, let's say, 0.3 maybe. Okay. Hey, now select the container, and then I'm going to turn on the multiple scattering. So if you want to understand it in detail, so you can watch my basic tutorials, so I won't be explaining too much, but I'll try to explain some. Okay, let me open the preview window. So we have got this parent, so let me do a render. Oops, sorry, I think I got too bright. Okay, no problem. That because we turn on the multiple scattering, and we can see that our smoke is blown out at the moment. So what we can do is we can decrease the smoke strength. Let's say, I think 0 will be better, so we don't need any smoke strength. So you can see that our smoke has been light up by our fire, so you can easily understand what multiple scattering refers to. So but the smoke fire is lighting the smoke, but it's too bit of strong. But let me just increase our fire, maybe about, let's say, 4. Okay, if we do another render, we have got more blown out fire, but we'll be controlling that with a fall off. So this will control our fire and fire's light casting fall off. Let's say if our fire is in middle, so if we increase the fall off, then it will just affect small area. So let me render it, then you can see that just a less amount of our smoke is affected by the color of fire. So I want this to be, let's say, about 9, and our fire to be, let's say, about 5. Do another render. Okay, that looks good. Let me go a few frames ahead. And remember that in playing around with these settings, you don't need to go ahead and resimulate. Just you go ahead and do quick render, but you cannot see the effect of multiple scattering in a preview window, so you have to render it. Okay, sorry. So let me move a few frames ahead and render it. So now we have just a little bit, since we don't, our fire is almost die out. So when we don't have, let's say, fire at around here, so we don't have any illumination by fire. So that's what multiple scattering is. uh, so we have got our pretty much good explosion, but I don't like the fire color about here, so to the rendering tab I want to change this color. Let's say about kind of a yellowish orange color. Okay, and this one as well, let me say it to about kind of this type of color. Okay, just you might want to play around a little bit to get a desired result. Okay, let me decrease the color value to about 0.8, let's say, and decrease the opacity maybe 0.35. Okay, so now we have got a little good looking fire. Okay, let me go back to simulation tab and play around with something. Let's say, let me set the buoyancy to 0.74. So while using Fume FX, you're gonna go ahead and experiment with different values. You're gonna try out, so you can get very different results. So just don't worry and try out different values. So the key of creating an explosion is just kind of animating our fuels, exact time, and maybe sometime you also want to play around with some time scales. So if you want to create a quick bursting and slow smoke flying out, then you might want to animate the time scale for but for right now let us leave that. And okay, let me set the scale to about, let's say that's, I think 9 will be fine. Okay, so if you have got anything, let me go ahead and check that. Okay, let me do another sim. That looks good, but I'm not too satisfied with the fuel animated, so I want to animate that in a little smoother manner. So let me go to the curve editor. Okay, so if you guys are not familiar with curve editor, you can just skip this step and just stay with whatever you have got. So let me just select animated tracks and select my simple source, fuel. So we have got this curve of our fuel animating, so I want this to be about, let's say, right about here. Maybe we want a quick bursting and then lasting a little longer. Let me add some keys right here as well. Okay, now let me just move this one, add one in right here as well. So you might want to play around with this, get a little smoother kind of fuel animation. Okay, increase this back up. Okay, maybe this one back and this one, sorry, just move these keys back. Okay, now close this one and do another sim. Okay, this time I'm going to do a little high resolution sim, so I'll be just pausing it while the simulation takes place, and I'll be back after the simulation completed. Okay, I've just done about half of the simulation, So that will give us basic idea what we have created. So let us see. Okay, so this explosion is looking really cool. Okay, so if you render it out, so it will take a little time. Okay, so still it's low in resolution, so you have to do a pretty high sim to get nice result. Like we have got this blocky region right here. Let's say you can see right here, so they are not very detailed because of low resolution, so you can do a high resolution sim to see that in good way, but it requires a larger system, so it might take a little bit time. Okay, I think that's pretty much of what we are creating today. Oops, I just changed with the spacing, so that went out. So no problem, I just done that, so that won't change our output too much. So you can still go ahead and play around with the fire colors and color opacity, smoke colors, smoke opacity, and your multiple scattering around fuels, temperature. Even here you can play a little more. So Fume FX is a tool with lots of values and settings, so you might want to play around and get your own result. um, but don't forget about the expansion and animating our fuel, so setting our smoke to fuel, kind of like that effects to get kind of explosion. um, Not only that, but you can use multiple sources to create larger explosions. So let me just duplicate this for a while just to show you guys. um, it might not create that good explosion, but I'm just showing you guys. Okay, kind of, let's say you can also use multiple sources to create your explosion. Let me reduce the height for this one as well. Okay, uh, go to object and add our both the source, and do the same with a little lower resolution. See about this. So now you can see that we have got all three sources exploding out, so you might want to make it a little closer. And so you can just go ahead and add some settings and create a really large explosions. If you want large scale explosions, you can add multiple sources into one container and create a really large explosion, but that will take more computing time. So that's one, just I'm just giving you guys basic idea. So let me just delete these two. So this is so this is what our explosion is, what we created today. So I hope you guys learned something from this tutorial, so you may be able to create your own explosions. Just play around with with some settings, and you can also try the settings I used. So you can just pause and write down those settings and just use the same settings if you want to practice, and then later on change your settings and see what you can get different output results. So thank you for watching this tutorial. This is Sansar, and I'll be back next week with some other tutorials. Goodbye.